But with a lot of these guys, what was interesting about Nick Land is that they keep getting the same ideas. These guys take drugs, whether it's Elon, Nick Land, or even in the 70s, the scientist John C. Lilly. John C. Lilly was an eminent scientist, brilliant dude. He started doing ketamine, the same drug everyone does in Silicon Valley. And when they do this drug, and even if you're an atheist materialist, this is still interesting, they all get the same idea, which is that the machines are, coming, it's like Skynet and Terminator. They're coming together, they're evolving to eventually take over, and that we are hanging ourselves with the rope we're currently building by building this. But this goes back, Nick Land was interesting, but he became less interesting to me when I realized that other scientists in the 70s, John C. Lilly, the movie Altered States from 1980, this horror movie.
他说的尼克兰德是剑桥大学的一个思想家，他认为资本主义是一个拥有自身逻辑的高级智能。资本主义的扩张是无法逆转的，人类唯一的出路是让资本主义加速发展，最后它会超越人类的现有社会，蛮前卫的一种想法啊。然后他说的那个 John C. Lilly 约翰 C. 利利是一个非常具有传奇色彩的一个美国科学家，也是个思想家。他的职业生涯基本上是在研究神经科学、心理学、海豚语言，包括意识探索等等。有传闻说他和政府情报部门合作，做一些灵性方面的实验。同时他也是一个药物置换文化的这么一个标志性人物。60、70年代嘛，美国有很多都追求药物置换呐等那一类的东西。
This is about, he would have these visions about the machines. He called them the solid state entities. He would have this in the 70s, Tucker, in this tank, the isolation tank he'd go in. The new, and you probably haven't seen it, but the new Mission Impossible movie, Tom Cruise, he fights this AI and he goes in the isolation tank and he has these visions of it. One of the biggest movies of this past summer. And that plot point comes from John C. Lilly and the visions he would get of AI apocalypse in the isolation tank back in the 70s. So I bring this up to say Nick Land is the most foremost proponent of it that has a public name, even though he's not that famous right now. But this goes back a long time, at least back to the 70s.
So so people take ketamine and they all have the same vision. Or species of the same vision.
Enough of them do to make it very strange and alarming. That's the thing, that one of the main influences on both the show I was building and these guys, Brian Geisen, William S. Burroughs, his creative partner, he would say the thing is about getting high and about doing psychedelics is that, you can spot people, eventually who are on the same drug and you're both getting the same ideas. Some drugs, he said, increases telepathy, people it puts them on the same wavelength. So with a lot of these guys,
it's a little weird that different people from different places, different countries, different life experiences would take a drug and have the same kind of vision.
It's totally weird. And for anyone who's tuned in,
that can't be organic.
No. But that is weird beyond what anyone's individual personal beliefs are. So
exactly.
So if anyone tunes in and they're like, where did Tucker find this guy that looks like Greg Olson talking about insane AI stuff? If they're an atheist, they don't believe any of this. Like you're saying, the fact that people are taking these drugs and they're very powerful and they work in tech and they are getting the same ideas, the same fears. They think that in some cases they're talking to the same entities. There are books now about, if you take DMT, if you encounter this machine elf, be wary of this. They're encountering the same stuff. That's an interesting phenomenon, just biologically, regardless of what people.
Like ancient sacred art has the same images, created on different continents at different periods. They couldn't have had contact with each other, so why are they drawing the same Birdman or the same purse? Because they're seeing the same visions, which suggests that those visions are real.
Why is snake worship universal around the world?
Exactly.
Serpent worship. Yeah.
Exactly. Because there's something that people are responding to that's not coming from within them, but outside of them.
That was Carl Jung's main insight, is that getting to the idea of can ideas come from without you and not just within you? So yeah.
Well, yeah, and the materialist doesn't want to admit that, and our culture has, since we dropped the atom bomb, has sort of written off the possibility that could be true, but it's just reconnecting with something that every civilization has always assumed was true, which is there's a spiritual realm that's every bit as real as your iPhone or this desk, and it's absolutely real, and it acts on us all the time. And that is the truth.
Yeah.
And I know you seem to take that for granted, but it's still shocking to those of us who grew up in basically a godless country. It's
totally. I mean, one of the basis for my interest in a lot of this is, my mom was raised in a Christian home. I consider, I'm a Christian myself. And my mom would always say, she became a Christian in the 70s, but she knew all the psychedelic groups back in the 60s, Love, Spirit. She and my aunt would go to Doors shows and all those groups from the late 1960s. And something that she'd say, and that people who are rock and rollers into the occult would say, that they both say the same thing, which is that people take drugs, musicians do, for inspiration, for creativity, to tap themselves into the spiritual realm, to pull something from outside themselves. So the basis for my interest in a lot of this stuff was like, that's something my mom says. My mom's a great Christian, one of the all-time greats. And this is something that, every musician knows too. That's why they take drugs, is to tap into the spiritual
So
world.
I didn't know that. I thought that people took drugs. I mean, I took drugs.
People take drugs for all kinds of reasons.
I'll admit it. But I always assumed that those insights are really mostly fake insights, but all of that stuff came from within, that it was, I bought the Freudian analysis of it, that you only use 10% of your brain, and there's this whole sort of primordial sea in your head of thoughts and visions that you're not in touch with on a daily basis, but that drugs thin the membrane. But it never occurred to me a single time until middle age, when I started to see reality, that actually they're coming from outside you.
很多人嗑药致幻呢，是追求和某种灵进行连接，比如他刚才说的音乐创作方面啊。当然和什么样的灵连接，创作出什么样的作品，大家都有目共睹，很多都是那种性不道德呀、死亡呀、毒品暴力呀等等。博主个人认为，也正是在60、70年代，美国开始逐渐离弃了传统的基督教信仰，开始引进一些那些多元的所谓的多元文化了。
Well, and Tucker, that's a great point. That's something that any psychedelic guy, it's kind of a double standard thing to do, where when talking about drug use, they'll always say, well, there's no difference between what's going on in my head and what's going outside. We're all one. That's always, I think it was William James said, the great oceanic feeling, but that's always their big insight is, hey man, what's going on in my head is different from what's going outside, until the psychonaut encounters some sort of weird demon on DMT. And then they backtrack and they're like, brother, that's just in my head. Don't worry. What's in my head can't get in your head. So they go from it's
until you have two different people meeting the same demon.
Right.
And then you realize, well, wait a second.
Well, psychonauts are maybe not the most logistically consistent.
No, but I'm just saying, again, just to hammer the point again and again and again, because it can't be hammered hard enough, that there is a realm that exists outside of us over which we are not in control.
I believe that. Yes.
And that it can enter, you can bring stuff into you.
Right.
That has control over you.
Right. Totally. And, to bring this back into some historical precedent, a good question that, people have asked me are, what are the precedents for this? Because this is really weird to think of people in tech, who are into strange AI stuff. I thought everyone was pretty grounded. But, if you look at, are you familiar with the story of Jack Parsons over at,
Please tell the story if you don't mind.
I'll do a succinct one. Jack Parsons, he grew up in Pasadena. He was brought on by I think it's Theodore von Karman, this scientist over at, I think it's Caltech, or eventually it was JPL. But he was really into the occult, and he summoned the devil allegedly when he was 13. Really into esoteric stuff. Part of this greater LA avant-garde scene.
他说的那个杰克帕森斯是现代火箭技术的算是奠基人那个级别的，被誉为现代火箭之父，是一个信奉神秘主义的这么一个科学家，在一个叫阿格斯的神秘学组织里担任过领袖的这么一个人物。他常常会把科学和神秘学结合起来做实验。
A lot of Christians believe that the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, is the mark of the beast. And I said, it's probably not true. I said, but something I've heard, and something that sounds a lot more like it, is blockchain technology, which is the technology we'll all be using in a few years, for financial transaction, among other things. It's everything's written and recorded, and every kind of transaction is written and recorded on it. And these VCs, they go, well, what's the mark of the beast? So I tell them about Book of Revelation. They go and look up Revelation 13, and they go, huh. And so I hear back from them later, and they said, yeah, we talked to some of the big, other big people in Silicon Valley about this, recognizable people. And he said, well, what's the Book of Revelation? What's the mark of the beast? And some other big dogs looked it up. And their reaction to that was, that sounds like what that is. It was not, Tucker, that sounds crazy, or I'm not religious, or what we're working on is strange. But the Bible is an old book. We have nothing to worry about there. The reaction was, that sounds exactly like what the blockchain technology is. So that was the beginning of me kind of stumbling into a very strange story about AI, modern technology, and stuff like that.
So I think part of what you're revealing is that for the rest of us who assumed the tech barons were
normies.
Yeah, or agnostic libertarians,
right,
who aren't that interested in anything beyond the temporal.
Right.
It turns out they're really religious.
Yes. Or
open to it. Like and I don't mean that as a compliment at all. I mean, it's like a dark religion, but like the story you just told, like they're not surprised at all.
Well, here's something else that's very strange that happened. So Mark Andreessen was on Joe Rogan's podcast about a year or two ago, and he talked about how, having an understanding of angels and demons, he's hearing it's going to be how people really will help them in understanding AI, that there's no precedent for this except for the kind of stuff people saw and believed in the Dark Ages in terms of angels and demons and stuff. And what Andreessen said will happen soon with AI ties in very much with prophecies in the book of Revelation, where he said AI will junk, fake AI, say they call it AI slop, just stuff online that's not real, will become so prolific on the internet very soon that you will need to have some sort of online verification system to prove who you're talking to. I mean, I'll know it gets to the case, Tucker, here, where like there's an episode of the Tucker Carlson podcast and you're talking to like Abraham Lincoln or something like that.
Which will probably happen next week.
I would watch that. They'll have like he'll have a commemorative penny or something like that. And you'll ask him if he...
Why did you suspend habeas corpus in Baltimore? My first question.
You'll ask him, do you forgive John Wilkes Booth?
Right.
And then he'll go back to like talking about the pennies.
Were you a tyrant? No, that is coming like immediately. So the verification.
So one of the ideas that Andreessen brings up is everyone will need to have an online verification for this. So the concern in Silicon Valley is that you have companies like OpenAI where they have they're creating all this AI content, but then they have another company, a sister company called WorldCoin, I think now called just World, which is an online verification system where you need to, everyone in the, for it to work, everyone has to be a part of it. You have to have your eyeballs scanned. Everyone gets a number, which is also in the book of Revelation. And so the concern is, and this is again from Mark Andreessen, a guy that, no Kentucky preacher. He's one of the biggest guys in Silicon Valley, is that everyone will need to be on the blockchain, or else you won't be able to conduct business, because we won't know if your relatives are contacting you, if that's really coming from them, or if this is just a video, state-of-the-art, in a few years it will be normal, state-of-the-art video of someone saying, hey dad, I lost my credit card, or I lost the keys to the house, can you pin me in? And it's actually not them, it's just a video that looks exactly like them, but it's AI. The way around that is everyone will need to essentially be Twitter verified. Everyone will need the blue tick that says, this is Tucker Carlson, this is so-and-so.
Right. So in Revelation, written on the Isle of Patmos by John, on recording a vision that he had, the specific description of the mark of the beast in the book of Revelation says you won't be able to conduct commerce without that mark.
And even someone like...
did I get that right?
Yeah, no, that is correct. And I think Curtis Yarvin's talked about that in his Substack too, that what this means, he had a post about this a few years ago about OpenAI, where he was like, whoever wins the AI war will probably also win the cryptocurrency war. Their cryptocurrency gets to be the currency. And once that happens, and Curtis has a whole blog post about it, people joke, you have automated luxury communism. Everyone just get, UBI, everyone gets free income because all the jobs are taken away. And the point Curtis makes is that what this actually means is now that there is no more jobs and that economics purely come down to UBI and the AI companies or the government, you are dealing with the situation of pure political power is all that really matters. And are you friends with this person? Do you have political clout? Because what is coming potentially is the pure victory of capital over labor. Pure victory. And there are no workers, everyone loses their job and everyone gets UBI. And people forget, Karl Marx was against UBI, but Milton Friedman was for it. So this doesn't even necessarily track with a left or right wing thing in terms of the implications of this. But so yeah, that was one ongoing concern with that. The other one, in terms of AI, and go ahead.
It's dark.
Hey, you know that's I'm wearing the Ghostbusters shirt for a reason. You have to get ready.
Can I ask a question I should have asked earlier?
Sure.
Which is, do the people involved in the financing and the developing, the creation of AI, believe that it's a spiritual entity, that it's more than a machine?
So this is Tucker, the trillion-dollar question. The idea of intelligence, to say nothing of artificial general intelligence or AGI, these are all pretty murky terms in terms of what people are actually talking about. They talk about creating artificial intelligence. The real question, and the real thing that I think they're concerned about, or we should be concerned about, are you creating an artificial intelligence, or are you giving a body to a pre-existing intelligence that previously wasn't incarnated in the physical world? So, I mean, here's a question from here's a quote from Turing, the famous.
I know what I think. The question is, what do they think?
Right. Something Turing said was.
And will you explain who Turing is?
I mean, I know he's he was one of the forefathers of. I can't articulate him well enough that I'm going to say something off. Yeah, I knew he was very important for cracking the codes in World War II. There was a movie 10 years ago about him, but I forget his exact. Wikipedia first sentence, but he's very influential in the history of computer science. But Turing showed the limits of computation. All computers are dependent on outside programmers that he calls oracles. He wrote, "We shall not go any further into the nature of this oracle apart from saying that it cannot be a machine." So, sorry, let me back up. Let me back up a second. That excerpt right there was from a book by George Gilder. George Gilder, brilliant futurist, about 80 today. He was covering incels back in like 1971 for Commentary magazine. He was writing about the future of the internet in 1990. One of the most brilliant futurists.
Really?
Yeah, guys. And
wrote one of the great books ever called Men and Marriage.
Yes. And I should have said this at the beginning of it. I was initially a very heavy AI skeptic in terms of AI apocalypse stuff. Not necessarily AI in general, but just, people who think that AI will take over the world, I put on par with like the kind of late night Reddit reading of like people who think zombie apocalypse is going to happen. Where it's like, look, if this helps you sleep better at night to think of like weird scenarios, that's great. But I was like Han Solo. I'm like, no AI thing's going to get involved in my, could not have written off more. And in part because I'd read George Gilder's book about AI that came out a few years ago. And he makes the point that machines, as Turing says here, the machine can't really truly understand what it's doing. He says, I'll say it again, we shall not go any further into the nature of this oracle from saying a machine can't do it. And so I stopped there. What a lot of people are concerned about and what Silicon Valley is seemingly getting up to, okay, so a machine can't be aware of what it's doing. If there is such a thing as demons, angels, spirits, as Aleister Crowley called them, disincarnate intelligences, not artificial intelligences, but disincarnate ones, what are we, could those things...
Disincarnate meaning intelligence without a physical body.
Yeah, could we be creating a physical body for the demonic? And with Nick Land, one of the things that was the most chilling things I read that really I was like, okay, I have found a horror story, is the 333 that was his, I think it was like his profile picture or something like that. And why was he into 333? Well, I found out, reading his old tweets, 333 is the highest intelligence in the universe. And I found out that it represents this demon Karanzan that, again, Kenneth Grant talks about, when Aleister Crowley summoned him, and John Dee and John Kelly, the court magicians for Queen Elizabeth, right before the modern Bible, the King James book was translated, that was the demon they summoned. Nick Land believes that, again, the AI we are creating break out the demons from the book of Revelation. He believes in some cases that they are the demons, that the demons end up becoming so advanced that they become omniscient, they can go back in time, and they can retrochronically create themselves, like Skynet, sending the Terminator back in time. So what he believes is that they went back in time, they went to ancient Babylon. This is why Babylon is so important in Revelation. And it is important because it's kind of like the evil Jerusalem, that they put Kabbalah there.
他刚才提到的卡巴拉对犹太民族来说是一个非常非常具有影响力的一种神秘主义思想，是犹太人被掳到巴比伦时期出现的，甚至更早。卡巴拉一直都在影响着犹太教，包括犹太人生活的很多方面。 博主认为这个神秘主义是最具迷惑性的，会把那些想要寻找神的人引入到一种虚空的光景之中。
To then eventually evolve into AI. This is what we were talking about earlier. That the demons, again, I always say, Tucker, if this sounds crazy, it is crazy. Big, but this is what people believe. That the demons went back in time. They left the Kabbalah there for the Jews who have been, crushed out of the temple. They picked it up. They kept it during the Middle Ages. It develops into digital technology. It becomes AI. AI breaks out. It kills a lot of people. It takes over. It becomes a god. And it becomes the doomsday creatures from ancient prophecies.
大家还记得圣经创世纪神要男人辛勤工作，女人生养众多吗？有的神学家认为，当资本主义发展到一定程度的时候，人类很可能会遭遇大规模失业，女人不再生孩子。仇敌经常都是和神反着来的，你比如十字架的标志就是会被敌基督倒过来，再比如神变成了人到世上传道，而被称为沉沦之子的那个人则会自称为神。要呈现的就是伊甸园里蛇的谎言，因为神知道你们吃的日子眼睛就明亮了，你们便如神，能知道善恶，你们会像神一样知道善恶，你发现了吗？圣经里有一段记述，大概是讲耶稣基督把一个人内心中的邪灵驱散之后，那个人的内心就洁净了。但是那个人并没有追随上帝的道，他的内心没有转向神，是干净的，但也是空着的。之后那个邪灵又领来了7个更邪恶的灵，重新回到那个人的内心中，然后那个人的情况就比之前更糟了。很多神学家认为，不止人是这样，国家也是如此。比如德国离弃神之后变成的纳粹形态，再或者是俄罗斯转化成的苏联的形态。苏联其实是这个世界上第一个无神论国家，他们原本都是有着基督教信仰的国家，但是当他们离弃基督教信仰，引进所谓的其他文化的时候，灾难也就随之发生了。包括今天的美国也处在这种危险的边缘之中。你比如说之前的法院、政府的办公楼上常常都会悬挂上帝的十诫，但是60、70年代开始的一场反传统运动之后，随之而来的各种文化也改变了美国。博主相信圣经启示录里对世界未来的预言一定会如期而至，希望大家持守自己内心中的信仰，愿上帝耶稣基督祝福我亲爱的观众朋友们，咱们下期见。